twice as much work to get an equal amount of respect, and I'm willing to put that work in because, you know, unfortunately at this time it's necessary.
You know, to kind of follow up on that a little bit, it seems like in pushing this fight, people either look at it as two top 135ers in the world or two hot chicks fighting. Does that bother you if it's marketed that way, you know, your looks over what you can actually do in the cage?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, it's just a part of the game. I would like to see the evolution of women's MMA get to the point where we're respected first and foremost as athletes and for our skill set and the skills and fighting ability that we deliver in the cage. And secondly, you know, what we are outside the cage. You know, and we all have our own way of marketing ourselves, and I think that there's nothing wrong with the way that anyone decides to do it. You know, fortunately for myself, you know, I definitely find myself tending to be more feminine outside the cage, and I think that's all right. And you know, that's the direction I'd like to see women's MMA go. Is definitely respected as an athlete first and foremost, and for whatever else afterwards. But you know, we have different. Women are marketed differently. Period. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter what you're selling. Women have a different selling point, and I think that angle is always going to be played up upon. So just something that we are going to, you know, continue to work with.
For Miesha and Ronda, you both are
Wait,
very.
That's two. Well, I see the looks part, I think, is more of a gimmick. You know, you get people to look originally that don't know anything about women's MMA or even MMA in general, you know, because it's something different. I mean, when do you see two girls fighting and when do you see two good-looking girls fighting? You know, it's something that people will stop and look at. And, you know, if you see two girls fighting on a playground or something like that, you'll stop and look and be like, hey, look, it's two girls fighting, and then, you know, you'll keep walking. You don't keep fans like that. But I think that you can get people, you know, to stop and look for a second with that. You don't retain fans with a gimmick, but you know, you rope them in the first place with that. And I think that, you know, that's why we don't see ring girls fighting, you know, because, yeah, sure, they're pretty, but, you know, if you actually stop me, like, after you're like, oh, there's two pretty chicks fighting, you're like, oh, Jesus, it's a disaster, and then you know, you'd move on, you wouldn't watch the rest of it. But if you first stop and go, oh, those two pretty girls fighting, like, oh my God, that was a really cool, you know, like, head kick, oh my God, that was, I've never seen a takedown like that before, oh my God, that's a great transition to the ground, you know, that it's the actual sport and skill that makes people stay, but you gotta show them something bright and shiny to look in the first place.
Can I just ask you, do you think, you're talking about kind of sexuality and all those kind of things, do you think it's more important to change the minds of men than women, from your perspective in MMA?
Well, men's minds definitely work differently than women's.
That's true.
Yeah, so I can't, you know, exactly say how it works, but, you know, I have a pretty good idea. I think, yeah, you know, based kind of going off what Ronda said, you know, that is the truth of the matter. If we can get something to draw the attention and then deliver the skill set, you know, that's where we're going to start to change the minds of the men and women as well. But I think our main audience is men, so we're going to target that a little bit more. I think the women are an easier sell because they see women, they don't care if they're pretty or they're not, they just like the fighting. You know, the men are a little different. They want to see, you know, the pretty girls, then they see the skill set delivered and they become fans of us as athletes. And then maybe later down the road, you know, it won't take as much of the pretty angle to get them to actually enjoy the entertaining fight.
Are you the same, Ronda, that you want to change the minds of men?
I disagree a little bit more because, yes, more of the MMA demographic is men, but I think that with putting on more women's fights, you would appeal to more women, and if you started attracting just as many women as men, you would have twice as many fans. You know, and it does help to change, you know, to get the men looking as well because they're already MMA fans, but I think that promoting women's MMA fights, you know, I've had so many women come up to me and be like, I was never into MMA before until I saw you ladies fighting, you know, and now I love it, now I'm into it. Oh my God, I love watching guys fight. I want a body like that. I started doing MMA because I saw you girls and you're gorgeous and I want to look just like you know, like I think that one demographic isn't more important than the other, but I think that it is, you know, we got to try our best to appeal to both.
But you did ask about changing the mindset though, right? That's what I'm talking about. I think the women don't necessarily need the change. You know what I mean? I think they're already kind of on board when they see it. They're like, yeah, you know, we're all on board. You know, the men are kind of like, oh, we don't know. Are these women just as good? Are they, you know, they have more doubt in us because men kind of seem to hold themselves here and women here a little bit, you know? So it's changing that so for them to see us as equals and that we can deliver the fighting ability just as well as the men.
This summer in London, women's boxing goes into the Olympics for the first time. 3 weight categories, flyweight, lightweight and welterweight, and middleweight, sorry. Do you think that, you know, a lot of people think that with women's boxing going into the Olympics, it'll have a huge impact on the development of women's boxing. Would you like to see women's MMA get into the Olympics? And do you think it'll get in before men's ever does?
I mean, the Olympics, it would be, I think it'd be very difficult to get MMA into the Olympics. You know, MMA is a very graphic sport, and the Olympics is a very politically correct event. And I think if you were going to want to see MMA in the Olympics, it would have to be some sort of like, you know, softer version of it, just like boxing in the, you know, in the Olympics is not like pro boxing.
3 rounds. Or...
Yeah. And then, you know, they don't get points for jabs or whatever. You know, it's like, so I think if you were ever to see MMA in the Olympics, there would have to be like headgear or shin pads or bigger gloves or something like that. They would have to change the rules of the sport to see it, you know, more likely to get accepted. And plus, it's like, how are you gonna, you know, do it? Because MMA, it's so hard on your body. You can only fight every couple of months, really. I mean, you can fight several times in a day, but you know, you can't do that on a regular basis. So they would have to make it a little softer MMA to be an amateur style, I think, for it to work.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to that, really. I think maybe what I would really like to see, maybe before MMA as a whole, you know, taking steps, because I think that's how things happen with the natural progression, is that to see the jiu-jitsu get in there, the submission wrestling, the no-gi, the gi, and start getting people familiarized with that style of art. And then we already kind of have, we have the wrestling in there, we have the boxing in there, and then you get the submission wrestling, the judo, and then maybe, you know, we could see it really come together and maybe do something along the lines of putting everything together in the Olympics.
Thank you both. Now for Ronda, earlier Miesha said that this is an entertainment business, and you've kind of taken almost a Chael Sonnen approach to speaking, where you're almost bringing it to like a sports entertainment. I don't mean that like a pro wrestling approach, but at least you're able to speak eloquently and also get your point across that's reminiscent of a pro wrestling promo. Do you think that that's needed, maybe not just in mixed martial arts, but just to get the sport kind of over with people, where it's not just like two people fighting, but also getting emotionally involved in what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, my fighting name is Ronda Rousey after Roddy Piper. You know, like I obviously take some inspiration from pro wrestling. You know, I had a Hulk Hogan wrestling buddy when I was a kid, which coincidentally I used to rip his arm off all the time, and it was sewed on with dental floss over and over. And you know, Gene LaBelle is one of my coaches, and he used to do pro wrestling. And one thing I noticed in wrestling that people liked more than anything else, it had like storylines and backstory. There was a reason why these two wanted to fight, you know, and something was being resolved by it. And I think playing up that part of it, you know, like I say this analogy all the time, that, you know, people talk about their sport like it's their favorite TV show. You know, they gossip about, you know, players like, oh, this football guy did this and he doesn't like that guy and not having that team. Like, people want to get into it. And if you make it more than just two people locked in a cage and fighting, if you make it seem like it means something or will resolve something, or, you know, then I think it makes it just much more interesting. So yes, I do think it's important, and I do it on purpose. You know, none of this has been an accident.
And Scott, do you think that that's needed? Do you need somebody like Ronda, like Chael Sonnen, like Josh Koscheck, who's willing to actually, you know, put themselves out there and maybe cut a promo to get people to get emotionally involved in it?
I mean, I think as a promoter, you know, it's you deal with so many different characters, right? And so, you know, to me, it's part of the game. It's already part of the sport. And you can have some guys that are very outspoken, some people that just like to come in there and not say much and do their work, and some people that you know, are kind of in the middle. So I think for this fight, I think it's you know, it's a fun thing to watch unravel as a promoter, and you know, they've done a very good job promoting this fight. And I tell you guys, March 3rd is going to be. I say don't let the looks deceive you here, because these ladies can really fight, and they're explosive and they're dangerous, and you'll see on the 3rd.
Unrelated to the March 3rd fight, is there some validation for you to see Nick Diaz fighting in the main event for the UFC undisputed, you know, interim title for welterweight? Is that some validation for you that the Strikeforce welterweight division, you know, is able to, you know?
Yeah, I think that, you know what, I mean, as you guys know, Strikeforce is going to be run as a separate league, and we've always had our own fighters. We still have our own fighters now. And during that great period, you know, some of the fighters came to UFC, and they're doing very well. I'm very happy for them. Some of these guys are good friends of mine, and I'm going to be voting for Nick tonight. So,
Miesha, you and your opponent, you're both great, strong, high-level grapplers. You submitted someone who had never been submitted before in order to win your title. But for your fight with Ronda, what do you see as her biggest strength in the fight and the biggest weakness you can exploit?
I think probably her biggest strength, I mean, obviously she has, would probably be, I don't know, I mean, I guess maybe her judo would be her strongest point. It's stylistically a little different than most of the people that I've fought. I know her grappling is good as well. You know, however, I think that I would be able to out-scramble her in most situations. I think having the wrestling just changes things a little bit when you hit the ground. But, you know, the main thing that I would like to say, though, is, you know, submitting Marloes Coenen is something that I think a lot of people didn't believe that would happen, or believe could happen, or something that I would do. And it just goes to show that you can never count me out, and you can never underestimate me, because I always have something, you know, on my sleeve, and I'm never the kind of person that will ever give up in any situation. And I'm definitely going to bring the fight 110%, and, you know, it's going to be interesting. You know, I can't really say what's going to happen. I just know that I'm going to bring everything that I've got to that fight, and I'm going to do everything that I can to bring my title home with me. And that's, I think, you know, all that I can really say.
Ronda, is there any potential that you'd make another Olympic run?
No. I mean, I'm going to go to the Olympics because it'll be cool just to be a spectator for once. But I know what's required to be the best in the world in judo. I know that the lifestyle that I need to live, and I just was not enjoying it anymore. You know, I think you get to a point where you're not learning new things, you're just learning how to do the things you already know a little better. And I just didn't really feel like challenged or, you know, interested in it anymore. You know, and that's the great thing about MMA is every single day I'm learning things that are entirely new and foreign to me. And I wasn't willing to be miserable for 4 years to possibly be happy for one day.
Gotcha.
You know, it wasn't worth it to me anymore.
Do you consider yourself a judo fighter or a Hayastin fighter?
Or what fighter?
Gokar's system, the Hayastin system.
There's a system?
Yeah, that's what it's called, is the Hayastin system.
I'm always a judoka.
All right.
We're breaking down for one-on-ones?
We'll do one-on-ones.
Okay.